Hi, I am Hossein Ziai, Hossein's son. On behalf of my mother, Mahasti, and myself, I would like to thank you all for being here. Some of you have traveled great distances to be here, and we are grateful. I'd also like to thank those that helped with this event, Latife Hariri, Shidan Taslimi, and Nayere Tohidi. Also, I want to thank John Scoville, who was one of my dad's oldest friends for more than 45 years. John composed the music that you heard as you walked in here. He wrote that piece for my dad in 2003, and it is called The Book of Radiance. Each of you had a different relationship with my father, and the glimpses of these different worlds that I've gotten over the past week have warmed my heart. I wish I could convey to you the depth of the tenderness and love that I experienced always as his son. I am certain that any good I may do in the world is a direct result of the good that was done to me in the love, generosity, and attention that I received from my parents. Before I introduce the first speaker, I just want to say that we have a 1-hour program today. We will also have a chance to visit the gravesite as well as a reception at 4:15 or so. I would like to introduce one of my father's really oldest and closest friends, Abu Sudavad, whom I've known since I was a little kid. And Abu will say a few words. Thank you so much.
Hossein Ziai was a relative of mine. He was the cousin of my cousin. But more than a relative, he was a friend. We grew up together in Tehran as a group of kids who went to school together, shared the same interests, and traveled together. In the middle of this group stood out Hossein with his roaring laughter that reverberated with joy, and it reflected the happiness that we all shared in those days, late 1950s, early 60s in Tehran. We even made a film together. He was the good guy, I was the bad guy. I shot him dead. But the film was conceived as an advertising for the Zippo cigarette lighter. And at the end, as I flick it open and light comes out, Hossein is resurrected. He jumps back on his feet with his usual laughter. I wish I had a magical lighter today, but I don't. He left us after 11th grade, came to the United States, where he finished high school, got into Yale, where he studied mathematics and physics, and then pursued philosophy at Harvard, came back to Tehran, where he taught for a while. And such was his passion for philosophy that he was one of the founders of the Institute of Philosophy in Tehran, still there. In the meantime, he had married Mahasti Afshar. Mahasti and her sister Sherry were my childhood neighbors from across the street. And their father was like a father to me, so we almost became now like in-laws. Then came the revolution. After a year or so, we left Tehran, and after a short while stay in Paris, we came to the United States. I went south, he went north, back to academia, where he started a new career. His background in mathematics had given him almost a unique set of tools to confront the complexities of philosophy, to dissect its formal logic, and to compare Eastern and Western philosophy and find merit where merit was due. He was a prolific writer, and he turned out paper after paper. There's a great deal of satisfaction if one does research, finds results, and then publishes it. But that's a satisfaction that primarily caters to one's own ego. A higher degree of satisfaction is when accumulated knowledge is imparted to those who are in want of that knowledge. It's the students. And Hossein just loved to teach. He also varied very much this system of transmission of knowledge from master to disciple that he had experienced in Iran. And he saw his PhD students as part of that same chain of transmission of knowledge. If I would call him when he wanted to brag about something, it was about his PhD students. He was very proud of them. But then he came to LA, and in LA he found an even higher degree of satisfaction. Because in LA, in the City of Angels, had gathered many Iranians whose younger ones wanted to know about their heritage. And there were those who, by association, friends and family, who also wanted to learn about Persian culture. And there were all those who had just had a glimpse of Persian culture and were fascinated by it, because Persian culture has this fascinating quality about it that whoever comes into contact with it is attracted to it. And so the number of students grew year after year, and Hossein saw a historic process in which a new foundation of Persian studies could be laid down here in California. And he was dedicated to this cause. And with dedication came higher aims and higher goals, and with higher goals came responsibility and decision-making. I once disagreed with one of his decisions, but the problem with Hossein was that he was so good a man himself that he could see nothing but goodness in other people. He could not envisage that in his whole world, kindness would be reciprocated with malice, and sweet words will be replaced with venom, and that venom can ultimately diminish you. I always thought that Hossein's roaring laughter would scare away the angel of death. But it seems at the end, pain and venom had so weakened him that there was no laughter left. And so he's no longer with us, but his memory shall always be with us, because we will be surrounded by the living proofs of his achievements that are his students. But nevertheless, we will miss him, and I will miss a dear friend. So long, my friend. May you rest in peace.
My name is Bill Schniedewind, and I'm the chair of the Department of Near Eastern Languages and Cultures at UCLA. On behalf of the department and on behalf of UCLA, I'm really privileged and honored to be here and to speak of my good friend and colleague, Hossein Ziai. I had the privilege of working with Hossein for the past 17 years that I've been at UCLA. And on Wednesday, August 24th, we suffered a truly great loss. Hossein came to UCLA in 1988, just 6 years before I did, and it's hard for me to imagine UCLA without Hossein. I came to know him as a teacher of uncommon devotion, as a scholar of uncommon distinction, and as a gentleman of uncommon character. Hossein was beloved and respected by his colleagues for his impeccable integrity, and I don't think there was one person in our department who was more universally respected for his intellectual rigor, his honesty, his integrity, and character than Professor Ziai. Hossein was a teacher of uncommon devotion. During my time at UCLA these last couple decades, Hossein has been the face of Iranian studies at UCLA. He helped build the program into one of the leading undergraduate and graduate programs in the United States. Each year, hundreds and hundreds of students enroll in courses in Iranian studies, largely because of what he's built here. It's the largest undergraduate program in the country. He taught classes in classical poetry, Persian prose, medieval Persian philosophical texts, and Persian ethics. His undergraduate and graduate seminars were always bursting with students. He inspired scores of undergraduates with his love of classical Persian literature and medieval philosophy. He was beloved by students, and he loved teaching. But the light has not quite gone out on Iranian studies at UCLA because of the things that Hossein has done in building the institution. The light and the vision that he shared in building the institution, bringing people like the Amuzagar family, the Musasabi family, the Taslimi family, others to share the vision of Iranian studies at UCLA. Because of this, Professor Ziai's legacy is not merely in books and on paper, but it's a living legacy of people and an institution. His passion was training the next generation of Iranian studies students, and he was a fierce advocate for his graduate students, and he had an unwavering support for them even long after they graduated. He graduated many students who are now teaching and working worldwide, in Tehran, in The Hague, at Harvard, at Amherst College, at Columbia, at Stanford, at the University of Washington, at Claremont, at UC Berkeley. So they are the testimony to his continuing light. Hossein was also a scholar of uncommon distinction. He was the professor of Iranian studies, the inaugural holder of the Amuzagar Chair in Iranian Studies, and the director of Iranian Studies at UCLA, where he had taught since 1988. He received his PhD in Islamic philosophy from Harvard University in 1976 and his Bachelor of Science in Physics and Mathematics from Yale in 1967. Before joining UCLA, he had taught at Tehran University, at Sharif University, at Harvard, at Brown, at Oberlin College. He has numerous publications dealing with Islamic philosophy, Iranian Illuminist school of philosophy, and Persian poetic wisdom. Some of his many books, and I don't have a time to go through all the different accomplishments and publications for Professor Ziai, but they include The Philosophy of Mathematics, The Realm of Lights, Knowledge and Illumination, The Book of Radiance, book on the philosophy of illumination. He also contributed many chapters to important edited volumes, an essay on Beyond Philosophy in the book on Myth and Philosophy, an essay on the source and nature of authority in a book on the political aspects of Islamic philosophy. He was a contributor to major encyclopedias and historical works like the Rutledge History of Islamic Philosophy, and the author of numerous articles on philosophy and intellectual traditions. He served as the elected president of the International Society of History and the Sciences, the vice president of the Center for the History of Science and Arabic and Medieval Philosophy. He was an elected member of the International Society for the Study of Medieval Philosophy. He served on countless editorial boards of international academic journals. He served for 2 terms as the chair of UCLA's Senate Committee on Academic Freedom. He established a book series called Bibliotheca Iranica, which he was the editor until till now. He was an invited lecturer at universities around the world, Harvard, Yale, you name the major university, and he was there. I could go on and on. There's no doubt, he was a scholar of uncommon distinction. But the thing that impressed me most about his scholarship was his intellectual search for the truth. And as such, his passing is not merely a great loss to Iranian studies and the Iranian community, but to humanity itself. It seems so fitting now that his work as a scholar, among other things, focused on the Illumination school of philosophy. He truly was someone who illuminated the world, and I am sad that his personal light has been extinguished. Still, he shall continue to illuminate us all through his scholarly legacy. Hussein was a gentleman of uncommon character. Although I first got to know him as a colleague, I later got to know him as a friend and a confidant. One of the good and bad things about being the chair of a department is that you get to know an awful lot of things about your colleagues. Sometimes it's not always a good thing to know too much about your colleagues. It's not always a good thing to shine a light in the darkness. But in Hussein's case, everything I learned about the man made me respect him all the more. He was fair and judicious. He upheld the highest moral standards and expected no less from his students and colleagues. He stood up against injustice. He was an outspoken advocate for the Green Movement and for the people of Iran. He was uncommonly kind and incredibly passionate. Indeed, I especially saw his passion on the tennis courts, where the last couple of years we had become regular tennis partners. He was quite a tennis player, and he really loved it. And I think he really enjoyed running me around the court, especially since I was his younger colleague. I will miss my tennis partner, my friend, my colleague. He was a light in this world, and I have been truly fortunate to have seen a glimmer of that light. Thank you.
I'm Latife Haqiqi, a colleague of Dr. Ziai at UCLA. I'm going to start my talk with 2 lines of Persian poetry. بدنامی حیات 2 روزی نبود بیش، آن هم کلیم با تو بگویم چسان گذشت. 1 روز صرف بستن دل شد به این و آن، روز دگر به کندن دل زین و آن گذشت. Which says the whole life can be summarized in 2 days. 1 day is spent becoming attached to all, the other spent becoming detached from all. For those of us whose life directly or indirectly has been touched by Dr. Ziai, he will continue to live in our hearts and minds. 23 years ago, I came to know Dr. Ziai when I started to teach at UCLA. We both came to UCLA at the same time with teaching methods based on our previous universities. In those early days, we used to co-teach the language classes of the Iranian Studies program. We both felt honored to have joined a fine and well-established program, but realized the potential for its growth of then a few students in each class. We started as colleagues, but through his spirit of collaborative leadership, he became a mentor, a friend. He became like my older brother. We would share matters of life, work, students. He became a close family friend. Dr. Ziai was a dedicated director who led the expansion of the Iranian studies at UCLA into a world-class program, a committed teacher, very much loved by his students. He had a very kind heart. He was always there if I or any other colleague or student needed someone to consult with. If I was very sick and worried about missing class, he would say, "Khanum Haqiqi," as he called me, "you have to get better. Life will go on. Nothing terrible will happen while you take care of yourself." When I lost my mother 4 months ago, he and Mahasti, his wonderful wife, were extremely supportive and kind. Standing here to honor him in his absence, it is unreal and difficult. His dedication to his students and the program was evident in his action. As some of you know, he loved to play tennis. When in a tennis court accident he broke his ankle, he was put in a heavy cast for a long time. But regardless of pain and discomfort, he would not miss his lectures. At times when I pushed his wheelchair as we were going to class, he still kept a positive attitude and joked about my wheelchair driving. He was a great scholar, well published, and highly respected in the field. In spite of many achievements, he was very humble and private. It was not until the last 2 years that I and a few others realized he was also an accomplished artist, that the beautiful paintings and calligraphy hanging in his office were his own work. His leadership style and integrity distinguished him among many in the academic settings. He became well known as a director with a passion and vision who had expanded a successful program to one that is uniquely well-rounded, including now all aspects of Iranian studies, culture, literature, history, and language. Another area of his life work was his deep concern with the human rights, upon which he became more focused in recent years. He was very troubled about basic rights of his fellow Iranians in his homeland, including the religious minorities. His comments were repeatedly an astonished expression of sorrow. Why are they being treated so cruelly? But he was always believed in the Iranian spirit and had great hopes for the future of Iran. I greatly admired principles to which he adhered fearlessly and steadfastly, as he was very firm in upholding them. During all these years, I learned so much from him: his honesty and integrity, his constant concern and consideration for others, his freedom from prejudice, and his manner as a teacher and colleague. It was through his tireless effort and the love and passion he had for the program and his students that he was able to expand it and make it into one of the best and well-known programs in the US, if not anywhere outside Iran. The program's success is directly linked into 2 principles he followed. First was about content. He always asked the question, what is right for the program? And second was about method or behavior. All agreements, all decisions would be made through consultation. When he wanted to make a decision, he shared his thoughts and carefully listened in the spirit of true consultation. He showed respect for my opinions and that of others. He was supportive and encouraging. I greatly valued his opinion and approach in identifying solutions to our challenges and opportunities. He truly loved his students. He was always concerned about their progress. I was witness to the love with which he treated them as his children and cared deeply for their achievements, as would a father. They knew he wanted them to have the best education and training, and he was proud that his graduates gained academic positions in some of the best universities. Their success and fulfillment was his sincere wish, his goal, and his joy. When he talked about his students, it was with a great pride. Anytime he spoke about the program, he talked of their success, an indicator of the quality of the program he led. An equally dedicated husband and father, he had the utmost love and respect for Mahasti. All of us who know them could see that behind this man and all his success was an equally dedicated and supportive woman who was always proud of him. He deeply loved his son Dad Ali, who we had all seen growing up into a young professional gentleman. He always shared with me Dad Ali's achievements. He was excited that Dad Ali has a balanced work life and he is surfing every morning. Above all, a proud grandfather. He was so excited about his two lovely granddaughters. He had their pictures in his office. They are so cute, he would say. They are so little, yet they sit at the computer and they Skype with me, he would continue. You could see and feel the joy in his face and his voice. As they grow up, they will be very proud of their grandfather and the legacy he leaves behind. Dr. Ziai, speaking on behalf of your colleagues, your students, the department, and UCLA, we will all miss you very much. But I assure you that your students, by the way you have trained them and planned the love and passion for Iran as you wished, will be the torchbearers and protectors of Iranian heritage in this land and the world. Iranian studies and your name will remain vibrant and alive. The generation you trained, with the way you touched their hearts, will carry the same passion to future and generations that are to come. So long we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. Thank you.
I'm Shidan Taslimi. I was fortunate to be his friend and enjoyed his friendship more in the last few years. What can you say about a friend who has lived such a unique and exemplary life, who has so many contributions, so many wonderful things to talk about? Hossein Ziai was a remarkable man. When you look at his life, when you look at our relationship with him, his education and scholarship, his brilliant mind, wealth of knowledge, his artistic talents, love of music, arts, and culture, love of Iran and Iranian culture, his kindness and nurturing ways, his dedication to education and well-being of his students, his sense of fairness and justice, his sense of humor and immense passion for life. But most of all, it was his heart and soul and his generosity that touched all of us. He was outspoken about the brutality in his country of birth and wished that all Iranians would enjoy the fruits of freedom and justice. He told me once, what is needed in Iran is moral capital. Hossein Ziai had a wealth of moral capital. He leaves behind a legacy rich with programs he established, the students he educated, and his love for humanity. I am grateful for his friendship and all that he has taught me. He will always have a place in my heart. My words are not adequate to convey my wishes for him on this next phase of his journey that his soul has embarked on. So I have selected a passage that I would like to read that embodies my highest and best wishes for him on this next phase of his existence. From the sweet-scented streams of thine eternity, give me to drink, O my God, and of the fruits of the tree of thy being, enable me to taste, O my hope. From the crystal springs of thy love, suffer me to quaff, O my glory, and beneath the shadow of thine everlasting providence, let me abide, O my light. Within the meadows of thy nearness, before thy presence, make me able to roam, O my beloved, and at the right hand of the throne of thy mercy, seat me, O my desire. From the fragrant breezes of thy joy, let a breath pass over me, O my goal, and in the heights of the paradise of their reality, let me gain admission, O my adored one. To the melodies of the dove of thy oneness, suffer me to hearken, O resplendent one, and through the spirit of thy power and thy might, quicken me, O my provider. In the spirit of thy love, keep me steadfast, O my succorer, and in the path of good pleasure, set firm my steps, O my maker. Within the garden of thine immortality, before thy countenance, let me abide forever, O thou who art merciful unto me. And upon the seat of thy glory establish me, O thou who art my possessor. To the heaven of thy loving kindness lift me up, O my quickener, and unto the day star of thy guidance lead me, O thou my attractor. Before the revelations of thine invisible spirit, summon me to be present, O thou who art my origin and my highest wish, and unto the essence of the fragrance of thy beauty, which thou wilt manifest, cause me to return, O thou who art my God. Potent art thou to do what pleaseth thee. Thou art verily the most exalted, the all glorious, the all highest.
My name is Nahid Pirnazar. I am currently a lecturer at UCLA and a former PhD student of Professor Hossein Ziai. درس معلم بود زمزمه محبتی جمعه به مکتب آورد طفل گریز پای را. This is a well-known Persian verse which roughly states the charismatic teacher can indeed attract a truant child to school even on a holiday. Hossein Ziai exemplified such a professor and mentor. He left an indelible mark on his students, past and present. As a former student of his, I witnessed his firsthand, his extended knowledge of the humanities, and of course, Iranian studies in particular. Like his other students, I was also in awe of his breadth of knowledge, his eloquence in multiple languages, his commitment to transmitting his passion for knowledge, and his love for Iran to everyone he taught. He was there to acknowledge your accomplishments, provide guidance and encouragement, but would never do the work for you. It was his belief in every individual student and his high level of expectation from them that prompted every student to maintain the same academic standards he exemplified. Hossein Ziai was a true Renaissance man. His unbiased passion for knowledge had no limit. No pleasure in life is sweeter than the pleasure of learning. هیچ لذتی از لذت دانستن شیرین‌تر نیست. That phrase has been etched in my mind ever since I heard it from him. I first met Hossein in the early 1960s when we both were high school American Field Service scholarship students. Our paths crossed again 30 years later in the Iranian Studies program of UCLA, first as his graduate student and later as a colleague teaching in the areas of classical Persian and Judeo-Persian literature, as well as Iranian Jewish history and culture. During this period, I was able to witness closely his inclusive vision for the department, which included the establishment of the Habib Levy Visiting Professorship in Judeo-Persian Literature and Eleanor and Jahangir Amuzgar Chair in Iranian Studies, both in the year 2000, the Musa Sabi Chair in Ancient Iranian Studies in 2004, and the recently established the Taslimi Lectureship in the Baha'i Faith in Iran. The varied topics of Eleanor and Jahangir Amuzgar lecture series, the chair he held, and his long list of publications reflect his expanding and diverse interest and knowledge of the greater Iranian civilization, past and present. Ever the ethical scholar, Professor Ziai demonstrated a moral obligation to truth and justice. As he once commented, there is no place for ignorance, arrogance, ill-speaking, or spite in academia. Instead, it's upon the academicians to commit themselves to, quote, the truth, that common essence which makes us all human, unquote. I would like to express my gratitude to Hossein Ziai on behalf of those generations of Iranians who have left behind a vast, largely unrecognized contribution to Iranian heritage, namely the legacy of Judeo-Persian literature. His initiative and effort helped to make UCLA second only to Hebrew University in this field. These few lines from Emrani, the Judeo-Persian poet of the 15th century, written at the introduction of his biblical epic Fathnameh, the Book of Conquest, are in tribute to Professor Hossein Ziai's memory. It's part of a prayer requesting for divine assistance to fulfill the task, sharing the same ethics as those honored by Hossein Ziai. مناجات در طلبکاری التفات الهی. خدایا بنده را هوشیار گردان، ز خواب غفلتم بیدار گردان. زبانم را به بد گفتن مده کام، به خیر آور مرا آغاز و انجام. ز گوشم پنبه غفلت برونار، ز غیبت در پناه خود نگهدار. خلاصی ده مرا از خود پرستی، مرا بیدار کن از خواب مستی. مرا در علم و دانش ده فراغت، توانگر سازم از گنج قناعت. ز حرص و کبر و بغض و کینه و آز، دلم را صاف و پاک خوشنود میساز. O Lord, make this humble one sober, awaken me from the sleep of ignorance. Do not let my tongue enjoy the pleasure of ill speaking. Bring me luck on this task from beginning to end. Unplug my closed ears from negligence. Protect me from slander. Deliver me from my own ego. Waken me from my drunken slumber. Let me learn and be learned. Strengthen me with the gift of contentment. From greed, arrogance, anger, and spite, elucidate and purify my heart and make me joyous. Make his soul rest in peace and joy. Thank you.
My name is Wali Ahmadi, and I'm currently a professor of Persian literature at UC Berkeley. For several years, several productive and very fruitful years, I had the great honor and distinction to be Professor Ziai's graduate student here at UCLA, and also his principal teaching assistant. It was an occasion of immense sadness to hear of Professor Hossein Ziai's untimely death. To me personally, Hossein was far more than a marvelous teacher and mentor, far more than a renowned scholar and prolific author. He was, beyond any doubt, a learned man, a man of profound refinement, a rigorously trained scholar, an academic, a public speaker of great effectiveness. All of these he obviously was, but he was much more. Above all, he was what can best be described as a perfect embodiment of a Khorasani Ayyar, a jovial, yet always dignified Persian Rand, a wholehearted Ashiq, in the grand Hafizian sense. He lived a life of profound humanness, characterized by a sense of unbound generosity of spirit and an acute sense of modesty. It is the loss of Hossein the scholar and the academic, but also Hossein the Ayyar, the Rand, and the Ashiq that proves so painful, so agonizing to so many of us who knew him. دلم چگونه شکیبا برد نبود تو را. Professor Ziai was a constant source of inspiration and encouragement to his graduate students, including myself. My intellectual and scholarly growth, as well as my progress in the academic ladder, owes much to his wholehearted support, advice, and recommendations. Time limitation prevents me from reminiscing about the many fruitful years that I had the opportunity to work with him. Let me finish by quoting a line from a classical Persian poet, Khaqani. آتش و آب ار بدانندی که از گیتی که رفت آتش و آب ار بدانندی که از گیتی که رفت آتش از غم خون شدی آب از حزن بگریستی.
I'm Nayera Tohidi, Professor of Gender and Women's Studies at Cal State Northridge, and also coordinator of the bilingual lecture series on Iran at UCLA. I had the honor of knowing Dr. Hossein Ziai since 1992, when I started teaching at UCLA as a lecturer and later as a visiting professor. I had remained in contact with him after I left UCLA for a position at CSUN in 1997. My close collaboration and later friendship with Professor Ziai began in 2003 when Professor Leonard Binder, then director of Center for Near Eastern Studies, asked me to coordinate Persian lecture series. Professor Ziai was among the UCLA faculty, along with Professor Nikki Keddy, Professor Behdad, and later Professor Susan Slombovic, the present director of the Center for Near Eastern Studies, and Professor Nawab, and several others who played important and supportive role in the progress and continuation of this successful program, which is now called the Bilingual Lecture Series on Iran. Professor Ziai not only kept encouraging me and giving me good advice, but humbly accepted my invitation in 2006 to present 2 public lectures, one in Persian and one in English, on philosophy, something which many of us talk, but in the community they don't know much about. And the way he presented that lecture in reachable, accessible language was very impressive to me and many others. And he did that for free without receiving any lecture fees. Later in 2008, again, he accepted to present 2 talks along with Dr. Mohsen Kadivar. The first 2 talks gave me and many people in the community, maybe for the first time, the chance to hear Dr. Ziai firsthand, because his knowledge and his impact